Because of the economic times, we have put a moratorium on travel unless there's an emergency or it was already purchased, and we're using video to do that. And I learned that a bunch of very highly paid and very busy clinicians had decided to come together around a clinical problem, unbeknownst to me, and I had to say no. I said, no, we can't have you getting together. It's too expensive. Why don't we use video, or why don't we use a different way, or why don't we wait until things are a little better? And the emails that I got back from them about how I didn't respect them, how that I didn't understand their world, how could I do such a horrible thing to them, and taking it personally. But the point is, they're right. It doesn't feel respected when you've been called together because of your expertise and then told, no, thank you. It's not as important. Well, it is not about importance. There's importance, and then there's how we spend the money we have in these economic times. And I would have said no to any other group. But it doesn't feel good when those things happen, and they're absolutely right. So the first thing is you say is, my job is to listen, to respect, to acknowledge, and to communicate again. I deeply appreciate who you are and what you bring to the table. The reason I had to do what I did was simply because of financial realities we all have to live with now. Let's see if we can find a different way to get back on track with this project. But they're still angry with me. Did I do the right thing? Absolutely. Did I know I was going to have to take the heat for it? Absolutely. Are they right? Absolutely. There is no one right way. I'm married to a lawyer. And he would have you believe that in the end, if you just understand the facts of the case, there's a right way, there's a right answer. I always say there's many ways to be right. So, but back to your question about workarounds, I love that. So let me tell you sort of the shining example of where that harms patients today. Despite who we are as a system, every once in a while we uncover disruptive behavior. And disruptive behavior can take the form of a physician who's abusive, a nurse who bullies, a nurse who's just kind of a grump. No one wants to talk to them. And so what happens is, rather than to deal with the behavior itself, everybody starts doing workarounds. Okay, well, let's not talk to them, so we'll just go to this person, or we'll ask for this piece of equipment so that we don't have to deal with the problem. Well, what happens is, when you have that sort of conduct going on, disruptive behavior that's tolerated, and workarounds and avoidance happening, patients get harmed. Which is why this year the Joint Commission issued a whole new standard on disruptive behavior. Because if you're afraid to call that grumpy doctor on call in the middle of the night who's abusive, or you are afraid to ask for something from the nurse who bullies or is grumpy or is abusive of one sector of his or her colleagues, then the information that the patient needs to have happen doesn't, and harm happens. And it's documented again in all kinds of reports and sentinel events and so forth. Well, so I say my job is no workarounds, because each time you uncover a workaround, underneath it all is a dysfunctional communication pattern of some sort. So, and sometimes it's even trust. My favorite thing is, every once in a while we will move to a new vendor of something. And the discernment or the deliberation about what vendor, so if we're going to stop using this surgical pad and start using that one, there's a very complicated financial and clinical process that goes on. They're trialed, side-by-side trials happen, and if in the end it's determined that we can get the same quality for less money, or we need better quality for a little bit more money, then the decision is made and nurses are involved. Well, when it's time to roll out the new product, I go out on the wards and I ask, so, did you pull all the old surgical pads? And they won't answer the question. And I'll say, where are the old surgical pads that you're hoarding? Because that's exactly what goes on, and I know it. And I don't even have to ask the question, but I discover it. They're so afraid that our process isn't as good as their knowledge and judgment that they're just going to hold on to cartons and cartons and cartons of the former product, even though we've promised the vendor will turn in our old stuff and swap it out, that they hoard. And this happens with linens, this happens with equipment. It's hilarious to me, but it again illustrates to me that we're too quiet. we need to speak up. And when we discover, and it happens, that the new product has a legitimate clinical flaw in it, well, yeah, if it was IV tubing, the stopcock's better, it's cheaper, the connections are just as good. But then you, the staff nurse, try it out and oh my gosh, I discovered that if the patient goes like this, it pulls tail, you know, some little thing that's, instead of hoarding the old ones, please speak up. Call me if you need to. Tell me, Debbie, were you a part of that decision? Because I need to explain to you what happened to my patient today. Instead of, I'll just keep my own private stash in my own locker of the old ones so I won't have to worry. And this goes on everywhere. There's workarounds to get around people who are difficult. There's workarounds where people didn't like decisions. And then there's workarounds where they don't like the way the electronic documentation happens. So they just create their own secret way of documenting because it's faster and it works for them. Problem is, the patient goes to the next unit and they can't find the documentation because it's electronic. So this is a culture of people sometimes who are too nice, sometimes don't trust, sometimes don't believe that their voice will be heard. And so again, my job is to inspire. If you're going to be part of that 40% of the 70%, keep on doing what you're doing. But when your patient gets harmed, you're going to hear from me. And you're not going to like it. So how we do that is the hard work. The expectation and the inspiration and the courage to do it. In fact, if you read the vision for nursing in Providence, which we just finished about a month and a half ago.
I'd like to see that.
I'll see if I can say it from memory. Let's see. As Providence nurses, we embrace our heritage of courage, compassion, and leading edge care as a steadfast, sacred presence in protecting and easing the way for those in need. The word courage is in there. The word steadfast is in there. That means we're there always. And that our first calling is protecting, nothing bad happens, and easing the way, helping the patient on the journey throughout healthcare and illness. So I believe that if I can give anything in my time in this role, it's an inspiration that everyone have the same courage that those sisters in 1860 who showed up in Vancouver, Washington with nothing and began begging and built this dynasty that thrives today because of it. I mean, I just can't even imagine what life must have been like to be called from Montreal, Canada to the shipyards, the mining camps, and the Native American reservations to go take care of the people, the orphans, and start teaching when you didn't even speak English when you came. It is quite remarkable. So it is those women that inspire me, and my job is to inspire and instill hope in every nurse in our system. That if one day all 17,000 of us said the same thing and did the same thing, life would be very different for our patients.